When Sarah Mitchell stepped off the military transport plane into the scorching Mojave Desert, she thought she knew what pain felt like. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 Purple Hearts, and countless hours of intensive training had prepared her for anything the military could throw at her way. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold in the next 72 hours. The sun was already merciless at 7 a.m., casting long shadows across the endless expanse of sand and rock. Around her, 12 other elite soldiers stood in formation, each one handpicked from different special operations units across the globe. They were here for one reason: to prove they had what it takes to join the most secretive and deadly force in the world. What none of them knew was that this wasn't just another survival exercise. Hidden beneath the sand dunes and rocky outcrops, a team of Delta Force instructors watched every move through high-tech surveillance equipment. They weren't just testing physical endurance or tactical skills. They were looking for something much rarer, something that couldn't be taught in any military academy or learned from any manual. They were searching for the one person who could access a level of mental and physical capability that most humans never even know exists. And Sarah was about to discover that everything she thought she knew about her own limits was about to be shattered in ways she never imagined possible. Sarah Mitchell had always been different, though she never understood exactly how until that burning morning in the Mojave Desert. Growing up in rural Montana, she was the girl who could outrun boys twice her size, who never seemed to get tired during long hikes in the mountains, and who had an almost supernatural ability to find her way home even in complete darkness. Her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran, used to watch her with knowing eyes and tell her stories about warriors who could push beyond normal human limits. She thought they were just stories. The military had noticed her unusual capabilities early. During basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Sarah consistently scored in the top 1% of all physical and mental assessments. Her drill sergeants were baffled by her ability to function perfectly on minimal sleep, her uncanny situational awareness, and her capacity to remain calm under extreme stress. By the time she completed Ranger School, she had set 3 unofficial records and caught the attention of several special operations recruiters. Her first deployment to Afghanistan changed everything. Sarah's unit was conducting a routine patrol in Helmand Province when they were ambushed by Taliban fighters. Pinned down in a rocky valley with no air support available, the situation looked hopeless. That's when something extraordinary happened. Sarah felt a strange shift in her perception, as if time itself slowed down. She could suddenly see the entire battlefield with perfect clarity, anticipating enemy movements before they happened. Moving with fluid precision, she single-handedly neutralized 6 enemy positions and coordinated her team's extraction. The after-action report described it as tactically impossible, but Sarah knew something deeper had occurred. The second incident happened 8 months later during a night raid on a suspected bomb-making facility. Sarah's team was moving through a compound when she suddenly stopped, holding up her hand. Despite having no apparent reason for concern, she insisted they change their route. Minutes later, the path they had originally planned to take erupted in a massive explosion from a hidden IED. When questioned about how she knew, Sarah couldn't explain it. She just felt it like a cold weight in her stomach that screamed danger. Word of these incidents eventually reached the highest levels of military intelligence. A classified file began circulating among select officers, documenting cases of soldiers who seemed to operate beyond normal human parameters. Sarah's name was added to a very short list of individuals who exhibited what researchers privately called enhanced operational awareness. Most of these soldiers never knew they were being monitored, but their careers were quietly guided toward increasingly challenging assignments. The invitation to the desert training exercise came through official channels, but Sarah sensed there was more to it than the standard survival course description suggested. The briefing was unusually vague, mentioning only that it was an advanced readiness assessment for qualified personnel. The other participants were equally mysterious about their backgrounds, though Sarah could tell from their bearing and confidence that these weren't ordinary soldiers. On the flight to Nevada, Sarah sat next to Marcus Chun, a quiet Navy SEAL whose reputation for impossible rescues in the South China Sea was legendary among special operations communities. Behind them was Elena Vasquez, an Air Force pararescue specialist who had survived a helicopter crash in the Hindu Kush and walked out of Taliban territory after 18 days. Each person on that plane had a story that defied conventional explanation, though none of them fully understood why they had been selected. The desert training facility looked deceptively simple from the outside. A few temporary buildings, some communication towers, and endless stretches of unforgiving terrain. But Sarah noticed details that others missed. The sophisticated antenna arrays disguised as routine equipment, the subtle signs of underground installations, and the way certain personnel moved with the distinctive precision of highly classified operations. Colonel James Harrison, their briefing officer, was a lean man with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of the people in front of him. He explained the exercise parameters in clinical terms. 72 hours in the desert with minimal equipment, navigation challenges, survival scenarios, and what he called adaptive problem-solving under extreme stress. The rules were simple. Use any means necessary to complete the assigned objectives, maintain team cohesion, and never quit. What Colonel Harrison didn't mention was that hidden throughout the training area were Delta Force operators conducting their own parallel exercise. These shadow instructors had been given specific orders. Identify any participant who demonstrated capabilities beyond normal special operation standards. They weren't looking for the strongest or the smartest. They were searching for individuals who could access levels of human performance that bordered on the superhuman. As the 13 participants were dropped at separate locations throughout the desert, Sarah felt that familiar shift in perception beginning to occur. The scorching heat, the vast emptiness, the knowledge that failure meant career-ending consequences, all of it created the perfect conditions for whatever lay dormant inside her to emerge. She didn't know that sophisticated monitoring equipment was already tracking her vital signs, recording her movements, and analyzing patterns that would determine the entire course of her future. The first objective seemed straightforward. Reach a designated checkpoint 15 miles away using only a compass, topographic map, and 1 quart of water. Most participants would approach this as a simple navigation exercise, rationing their water carefully and moving efficiently across the terrain. But as Sarah studied the map, she began to see patterns that weren't immediately obvious. The checkpoint wasn't just a destination. It was positioned at the intersection of several geographic features that created a natural funnel. Anyone approaching from the obvious route would be completely exposed and vulnerable. Something told her this wasn't really about navigation at all. It was about understanding that in the real world, the most direct path is often the most dangerous. Sarah chose a longer route that would take her through a series of rocky formations, providing cover and multiple escape routes. The decision would add 6 hours to her journey and require her to stretch her water supply beyond recommended limits. But her instincts insisted it was the right choice. As she moved deeper into the desert, Sarah began to notice signs that she wasn't alone. Subtle disturbances in the sand, the occasional glint of metal in the distance, and a persistent feeling of being watched. A normal soldier might have dismissed these as paranoid thoughts brought on by heat and stress. Sarah trusted her heightened awareness and adjusted her movement patterns accordingly. She was being hunted, though she didn't yet understand by whom or why. The real test was just beginning, and Sarah was about to discover that her mysterious abilities were exactly what her unknown observers had been hoping to find. In the command center buried beneath the desert floor, Delta Force instructors watched her progress with growing interest. She was demonstrating the kind of tactical intuition and enhanced awareness that they had been searching for across multiple branches of the military. The question now was whether she could maintain this level of performance as the challenges escalated far beyond anything described in the official briefing. The sun climbed higher, and Sarah pressed forward into what she believed was a survival exercise. She had no idea she was actually undergoing the most important audition of her military career, one that would either unlock capabilities she never knew she possessed or push her beyond the breaking point of human endurance. The desert held no mercy for the weak, and the observers hidden in the shadows showed even less. The first checkpoint turned out to be empty except for a metal box containing new instructions and a small radio transmitter. Sarah approached carefully, every instinct telling her that this moment was crucial. The box was positioned in the center of a natural clearing, completely exposed from multiple angles. Anyone approaching carelessly would be visible for hundreds of yards in any direction. As she studied the area, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Tire tracks partially hidden by wind-blown sand, and the subtle impressions of boot prints that were far too fresh to belong to previous training exercises. Inside the box, alongside a cryptic map marking 3 additional locations, was a note that changed everything. Trust no one. Question everything. Your real test begins now. Below was a single line that made Sarah's hands tremble. They know about Somalia. Somalia was a classified mission that officially never happened, where Sarah had demonstrated abilities that she couldn't explain and that had been buried in files marked beyond top secret. Someone had been watching her far longer than she had ever imagined. The radio transmitter crackled to life with a voice she didn't recognize. Candidate 7, you have company. Multiple hostiles converging on your position. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The transmission cut out, leaving Sarah alone with the terrifying realization that she had walked into something far more dangerous than any training exercise. This was real, and her survival depended on capabilities she was only beginning to understand. Sarah moved with liquid precision, her enhanced awareness suddenly operating at full capacity. Time seemed to slow as she processed dozens of environmental factors simultaneously. Wind direction, natural cover points, sight lines, and the subtle sounds of movement that most people would never detect. She could feel the presence of at least 4 different groups closing in on her position from different directions. These weren't instructors running a training scenario. These were professionals with lethal intent. The first contact came from the north, where 2 figures in desert camouflage emerged from behind a rock formation. Sarah was already moving before they appeared, her body responding to threats she sensed rather than saw. She flowed between cover points like water, using terrain features to mask her movement, while keeping the radio transmitter active to maintain contact with whoever was trying to help her. But even as she evaded immediate danger, Sarah realized that her mysterious benefactor might not be trustworthy either. As she moved deeper into a maze of rocky outcroppings, Sarah's mind began processing the situation with computer-like clarity. The timing was too perfect, the setup too elaborate for this to be a random attack. Someone had orchestrated this entire scenario, but she couldn't determine if she was the target or if this was an even more sophisticated test than she had imagined. The line between training exercise and genuine threat had completely disappeared, leaving her in a deadly game where the rules kept changing. The voice on the radio spoke again, providing tactical information that proved unnaturally accurate. 2 more hostiles approaching from the southwest, armed with automatic weapons. Sniper positioned on the ridge line approximately 400 meters to your east. Sarah followed the guidance and successfully avoided 3 separate ambush attempts, but each success raised more questions. How could someone provide such precise intelligence without sophisticated surveillance equipment? And why was someone with access to that level of technology helping her instead of capturing her? The answer came when Sarah reached the second checkpoint and discovered that she wasn't the only participant being hunted. Marcus Chin's body lay behind a cluster of boulders, alive but unconscious, with dart wounds that suggested he had been taken down with non-lethal weapons. Elena Vasquez was missing entirely, with only her discarded equipment and signs of a struggle marking her last known position. Whatever was happening, it was targeting the entire group of elite soldiers who had been brought to this desert location. Sarah's tactical assessment of the situation led to a disturbing conclusion. The The hunters demonstrated capabilities that matched or exceeded those of her own special operations training. Their equipment was military-grade, their tactics were professional, and their coordination suggested extensive experience with this type of operation. But most troubling was their apparent knowledge of each participant's background and capabilities. They weren't just hunting randomly. They were specifically targeting individuals with enhanced operational abilities. The radio transmitted one final message before going completely silent. The facility is compromised. Your extraction window closes at sunset. Trust your instincts, not your orders. Sarah stared at the dead transmitter, realizing that she was now completely on her own in hostile territory with no clear understanding of who was friend or enemy. The desert that had seemed challenging but manageable a few hours earlier now felt like an alien landscape designed specifically to test her survival abilities beyond any reasonable limit. As the afternoon sun reached its peak intensity, Sarah made a decision that would define the rest of her military career. Instead of attempting to reach the remaining checkpoints or searching for other survivors, she chose to hunt the hunters. Her enhanced awareness was telling her that passive evasion would only delay the inevitable. If she was going to survive this situation, she needed to take control of it by turning the tables on whoever was orchestrating this elaborate trap. Moving with careful deliberation, Sarah began tracking the teams that had been pursuing her. Her heightened senses allowed her to follow signs that would have been invisible to most people. Minute disturbances in sand patterns, the faint odor of gun oil carried on desert breezes, and the almost inaudible sound of radio communications from poorly shielded equipment. Each piece of information built a clearer picture of what she was facing. The hunters were using standard military small unit tactics, but their equipment included technology that shouldn't have been available to anyone outside of the most classified government programs. Night vision devices, satellite communication systems, and weapons that didn't match any standard military inventory. Sarah realized that she had stumbled into something that went far beyond a training exercise or even a rogue military operation. This had the hallmarks of a black operation designed to test or eliminate individuals with specific capabilities. As she closed in on the first hunter team, Sarah felt that familiar shift in perception that had saved her life in Afghanistan. Time slowed, her vision sharpened, and she could suddenly predict her opponent's movements with uncanny accuracy. She moved like a ghost through the desert terrain, using abilities she didn't fully understand but had learned to trust completely. Within minutes, she had neutralized both hunters using non-lethal techniques that left them unconscious but alive. Their equipment confirmed her worst fears. Radio frequencies that were listed as classified, weapons with serial numbers that had been filed off, and identification documents that looked authentic, but contained inconsistencies that suggested sophisticated forgeries. These weren't military personnel conducting an authorized operation. They were something else entirely, and their interest in Sarah and the other participants was clearly connected to capabilities that officially didn't exist. The second team proved more challenging, having been alerted by their missing colleagues, and adjusted their tactics accordingly. But Sarah's enhanced abilities were continuing to evolve under extreme stress, reaching levels that she had never experienced before. She could feel the presence of hostile intent from hundreds of yards away, detect lies in radio transmissions she intercepted, and move through the desert with supernatural stealth. She was becoming something beyond a normal special operations soldier, though she still didn't understand what that meant. By late afternoon, Sarah had captured or neutralized 6 different hunters and rescued 3 of her fellow participants, including Marcus Chun, who recovered quickly once the sedative in his system wore off. The rescued soldiers confirmed that they had experienced similar attacks, and that several participants were still missing. More disturbing was their shared observation that the hunters seemed specifically interested in capturing rather than killing anyone who demonstrated unusual capabilities during the encounters. As sunset approached, Sarah found herself leading a small group of elite soldiers in a desperate attempt to reach what they hoped would be a legitimate extraction point. But She was beginning to suspect that extraction might not be the end of this ordeal. Someone had invested enormous resources in orchestrating this elaborate scenario, and she doubted they would simply allow valuable subjects to walk away. The real test was far from over, and Sarah was starting to understand that her mysterious abilities were both the reason she had been selected and the key to her survival. The desert night was approaching, bringing new challenges and opportunities. Sarah's enhanced awareness was telling her that the most dangerous part of this experience was still ahead. In the growing darkness, she would either discover the full extent of her capabilities or face consequences that could destroy everything she had worked toward in her military career. The desert night brought a different kind of terror than the scorching daylight hours. As darkness fell across the Mojave, Sarah led her small group of survivors toward what their maps indicated should be the final extraction point. Marcus Chun moved with the fluid efficiency of an elite warrior despite his earlier capture, while Elena Vasquez had rejoined them after escaping her own pursuers through methods she described only as impossible luck. The fourth member of their group was David Kozlov, a Marine Force reconnaissance specialist who had been found tied to a metal stake in the middle of nowhere, apparently used as bait in an elaborate trap. Each survivor carried disturbing pieces of a larger puzzle. Elena described her captors as speaking multiple languages fluently and displaying intimate knowledge of her family background, including classified details about her childhood in East Los Angeles that shouldn't have existed in any official file. David reported that his interrogators seemed less interested in military information than in understanding how he had survived a helicopter crash in Afghanistan that should have been fatal to everyone aboard. Marcus remained tight-lipped about his experience, but Sarah noticed that his left hand trembled slightly whenever the conversation turned to what had happened during his captivity. As they moved through the darkness, Sarah's enhanced awareness reached new levels of intensity. She could detect the heartbeats of her companions from several feet away, sense the emotional states of everyone in the group, and perceive threats that existed beyond the normal range of human senses. The night air carried information that she processed automatically. The chemical signatures of different types of equipment, the distinctive electromagnetic fields generated by sophisticated surveillance devices, and the subtle vibrations that indicated vehicle movement from miles away. The extraction point turned out to be an abandoned mining facility built into the side of a rocky cliff. The structures looked decades old, but Sarah immediately noticed signs of recent activity. Fresh tire tracks, modern electrical cables running between buildings, and the faint glow of active electronics emanating from what appeared to be derelict structures. This wasn't a random location chosen for convenience. Someone had been using this facility for purposes that required both secrecy and significant technological resources. Inside the main building, they discovered equipment that confirmed their worst suspicions about the nature of their situation. Banks of computer monitors displayed real-time tracking information for dozens of individuals, including detailed psychological profiles and performance assessments that went far beyond standard military records. Sarah found her own file and realized with horror that someone had been monitoring her activities for over 3 years, documenting every mission, every unusual incident, and every demonstration of capabilities that exceeded normal human parameters. The files revealed the existence of something called Project Prometheus, a classified research program designed to identify and evaluate individuals who demonstrated what researchers termed enhanced human potential. The program had been recruiting subjects from elite military units around the world, using elaborate scenarios like the desert survival exercise to push candidates beyond their normal limitations and trigger the full manifestation of their unusual abilities. Sarah and her companions weren't just participants in a training exercise. They were test subjects in a human experimentation program. The most disturbing discovery was a series of video recordings showing previous groups of candidates who had been brought to this facility over the past 5 years. Some demonstrated abilities that seemed to defy physical laws: supernatural speed, impossible strength, and cognitive processing that bordered on precognition. But The recordings also showed what happened to candidates who failed to meet program requirements. They were subjected to memory modification procedures and returned to their regular units with no recollection of their experiences, their unusual capabilities permanently suppressed through methods that the files described only as neurological conditioning. Sarah realized that their escape from the hunters had been allowed to happen. The facility was designed to be discovered, the files were meant to be found, and their current situation was simply another phase of an elaborate psychological evaluation. Project Prometheus wasn't just studying enhanced human potential. It was creating controlled stress scenarios to force the complete activation of dormant abilities in selected individuals. Everything that had happened since their arrival in the desert had been orchestrated to push them beyond their psychological and physical limitations. The sound of approaching helicopters confirmed that their time at the facility was coming to an end. But instead of feeling relief at the prospect of rescue, Sarah experienced a cold certainty that these aircraft weren't bringing salvation. The timing was too perfect, the discovery too convenient, and the entire situation too elaborately constructed to be anything other than another layer of the same test they had been undergoing since their arrival. As military personnel in unmarked uniforms began surrounding the facility, Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of surrendering to what appeared to be official rescue, she chose to trust the enhanced awareness that had kept her alive throughout this ordeal. Every instinct told her that these approaching soldiers represented a threat rather than salvation, and that submitting to their authority would mean losing not just her freedom, but her essential identity as well. She gathered Marcus, Elena, and David together and shared her assessment of the situation. The approaching forces were part of Project Prometheus, and their apparent rescue was actually the final phase of the selection process. Candidates who submitted willingly would be inducted into whatever organization was behind the project, while those who resisted would face the memory modification procedures they had read about in the files. Either way, their lives as they had known them were effectively over. The group faced an impossible choice: surrender to unknown authorities who had demonstrated sophisticated manipulation capabilities, or attempt to escape through a desert that was certainly monitored by advanced surveillance systems. Sarah's enhanced abilities were telling her that there might be a third option, but it would require trusting capabilities that she still didn't fully understand and pushing her companions beyond anything they had previously experienced. As the helicopters landed and armed personnel began advancing toward the facility, Sarah felt that familiar shift in perception that had saved her life multiple times over the past 24 hours. Time seemed to slow. Her awareness expanded to encompass the entire area around the facility, and she could suddenly perceive tactical possibilities that had been invisible moments before. But this time, the sensation was different. Instead of simply enhancing her own capabilities, she felt a strange connection to Marcus, Elena, and David, as if their combined enhanced potential was creating something greater than any individual ability. The approaching soldiers moved with professional precision, but Sarah could detect subtle flaws in their coordination that suggested they weren't expecting serious resistance from exhausted survivors. Their equipment was impressive but standardized, lacking the flexibility to deal with opponents who could operate beyond normal tactical parameters. Most importantly, their psychological profiles suggested they were regular military personnel who had been given incomplete information about the true nature of their targets. Sarah realized that Project Prometheus had made a critical error in assuming that enhanced individuals would either submit to authority or attempt to escape using conventional methods. They hadn't considered the possibility that candidates might choose to stand and fight using abilities that exceeded their own research parameters. The next few minutes would determine whether Sarah and her companions became unwilling subjects in a classified research program or demonstrated that human potential could exceed even the most sophisticated attempts to control it. The facility's emergency lighting system activated automatically as the sun disappeared completely behind the western mountains. In the harsh artificial illumination, Sarah could see the advancing soldiers clearly for the first time. They moved with the distinctive precision of special operations personnel, but their faces showed the blank expression of individuals following orders without understanding their true purpose. These weren't the architects of Project Prometheus. They were tools being used by people who remained safely hidden behind layers of classification and bureaucracy. As the first soldiers reached the facility's perimeter, Sarah activated capabilities she had never consciously accessed before. Her enhanced awareness expanded to encompass not just immediate threats, but the entire tactical situation across multiple square miles of desert terrain. She could sense the positions of sniper teams, the flight patterns of surveillance drones, and the communication networks that connected the various elements of the operation. For the first time since this ordeal began, Sarah felt like she truly understood the scope of what she was facing. The real battle was about to begin, and it would determine not just the fate of 4 elite soldiers, but the future of human potential itself. The months following the Nevada incident transformed Sarah's understanding of both human potential and the forces arrayed against its development. Working through the enhanced network that connected her with dozens of similar individuals worldwide, she learned that Project Prometheus was just the publicly visible surface of a much deeper conspiracy to control human evolution. Ancient organizations, modern governments, and private corporations had been collaborating for decades to ensure that enhanced capabilities remained either hidden or harnessed for their own purposes. Sarah's military career officially ended with a medical discharge citing stress-related psychological issues from her deployment experiences. The official record contained no mention of Nevada, the desert facility, or any unusual capabilities. To external observers, she had simply been another veteran who couldn't handle the transition back to civilian life. But the enhanced network provided her with resources and support that allowed her to build a new identity while developing her abilities far beyond anything Project Prometheus had documented. Marcus Chun disappeared entirely from official records, his Navy SEAL career ending with a training accident that left no body, but plenty of documentation suggesting death during a classified mission. Elena Vasquez completed her Air Force service with distinction before accepting a position with a private security company that existed only as a cover for enhanced individuals who needed legitimate employment while pursuing their real work. David Kozlov returned to his Marine unit for 6 months before suffering a psychological breakdown that resulted in his quiet removal from active duty and assignment to a Veterans Administration facility that didn't officially exist. But their apparent separation was illusory. Through the enhanced network, the 4 remained in constant contact while building parallel lives that allowed them to investigate the true scope of the forces they had discovered in the desert. Sarah established herself as a wilderness survival instructor in Montana, using her legitimate expertise to create a cover identity while secretly training other enhanced individuals in techniques for evading detection and developing their capabilities safely. The network's investigations revealed that enhanced humans had been appearing throughout history, often in positions of significant influence before disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Ancient texts described warriors with supernatural abilities, explorers who survived impossible journeys, and leaders who seemed to possess uncanny insight into human nature. Modern records showed patterns of enhanced individuals being recruited into classified programs, disappearing during suspicious accidents, or suffering psychological breakdowns that eliminated their threat to established power structures. Project Prometheus represented the most sophisticated attempt to date at identifying, studying, and controlling enhanced humans, but it was far from the only such effort. Similar programs operated under different names and organizational structures across multiple countries, all sharing information and coordinating their responses to the growing number of enhanced individuals appearing worldwide. The desert facility had been destroyed in what official reports described as an accidental explosion during a routine training exercise, but 3 replacement facilities were already under construction in other remote locations. Sarah's enhanced awareness continued to evolve during this period, reaching levels that allowed her to perceive connections and patterns that span continents and decades. She could sense the activities of enhanced individuals thousands of miles away, detect the operations of organizations seeking to control or eliminate them, and perceive threats to the network before they fully materialized. Her abilities had grown far beyond anything that could be explained through conventional understanding of human neurology or psychology. The first major test of the enhanced network's capabilities came when Elena discovered that a group of enhanced children were being held at a private research facility in Switzerland. The children, all between the ages of 8 and 14, had been taken from their families under various pretenses and were being subjected to experimental procedures designed to artificially amplify their abilities while ensuring their complete psychological dependence on their controllers. The facility was protected by security measures that exceeded those of most military installations, and official channels offered no possibility of rescue or intervention. Sarah coordinated the response through the enhanced network, bringing together individuals with complementary capabilities from across Europe and North America. The operation required abilities that no conventional special operations team could have provided. The capacity to move through heavily monitored areas without detection, to disable sophisticated security systems through intuitive understanding of their vulnerabilities, and to coordinate complex actions across multiple time zones without conventional communication methods. The rescue operation succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, with all 14 children extracted safely, and their captors left unconscious but unharmed. But the aftermath revealed the true scope of what the enhanced network was facing. The facility had been operated by an organization that maintained similar installations in 12 different countries, all focused on identifying and controlling enhanced children before their abilities could fully develop. The rescued children carried evidence of procedures that had been refined through years of experimentation on previous subjects who had not survived the process. The success at the Swiss facility triggered a coordinated response from organizations that had previously operated independently. Sarah found herself at the center of a global conflict that most of the world didn't know existed, where enhanced humans fought to protect their own kind against forces that sought to control or eliminate them entirely. The stakes went far beyond individual survival to encompass the future direction of human evolution itself. Through her expanded awareness, Sarah began to understand that enhanced capabilities weren't random mutations or the result of experimental procedures. They represented a natural evolutionary development that was accelerating due to environmental and social pressures that demanded new forms of human adaptation. The organizations seeking to control enhanced humans weren't just protecting their own power. They were attempting to prevent humanity from developing capabilities that would make traditional forms of control obsolete. The enhanced network grew rapidly as more individuals discovered their abilities and sought connection with others who shared their experiences. Sarah found herself in an informal leadership role, using her military background and enhanced awareness to coordinate defensive operations while helping newly awakened individuals develop their capabilities safely. The network began establishing hidden sanctuaries where enhanced humans could live openly while contributing their abilities to the protection and development of their community. The conflict escalated when government agencies began implementing protocols designed to identify enhanced individuals through routine activities like employment background checks, medical examinations, and social media monitoring. Advanced artificial intelligence systems analyze behavioral patterns, performance records, and psychological profiles to identify individuals who might possess enhanced capabilities, subjecting them to surveillance and eventual recruitment or elimination. The enhanced network was forced to develop countermeasures that protected their identities while allowing them to function in normal society. Sarah's role evolved from survival instructor to something approaching a military commander, though the forces she coordinated operated according to principles that transcended conventional military doctrine. Enhanced individuals could accomplish objectives that would require entire battalions of normal soldiers. But they also faced threats that no amount of conventional firepower could address. The conflict demanded new forms of strategy and tactics that utilize capabilities most people couldn't even conceptualize. The turning point came when Sarah's enhanced awareness detected a plan to release electromagnetic pulse weapons in major population centers worldwide. The weapons were designed to disrupt the neurological functions of enhanced individuals while leaving normal humans unaffected, effectively eliminating the enhanced network's ability to coordinate resistance. The plan represented a final solution approach that would prevent the natural evolution of human consciousness while maintaining existing power structures indefinitely. Stopping the electromagnetic pulse deployment required the enhanced network to reveal its existence and capabilities to a degree that could never be concealed again. Sarah coordinated simultaneous operations across 15 major cities, with enhanced individuals working openly to disable weapons systems and neutralize the personnel attempting to deploy them. The operations succeeded completely, but they also announced to the world that humans with supernatural abilities were real, organized, and capable of challenging established authorities. In the aftermath of what media reports described as a series of coordinated terrorist attacks against government facilities, Sarah found herself leading a movement that represented a new phase in human evolution. The enhanced network had evolved from a protective organization into something approaching a new form of human civilization, one based on capabilities and consciousness that exceeded anything in recorded history. The desert survival test that had started her journey seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had been less than 2 years since she first walked into the Mojave and discovered abilities she never knew she possessed. Standing on a mountain peak in Montana, surrounded by enhanced individuals who had traveled from around the world to join their community, Sarah realized that her grandfather's stories about warriors who transcended normal limitations hadn't just been preparation for her own journey. They had been prophecies about humanity's future, and she had become one of the leaders guiding that future into reality. The survival test was over, but the real work of human evolution was just beginning.